Today's major news from Korea. On the 26th, Hyundai Rotem and Hanwha Defense signed an initial contract worth $5.8 billion to export the K2 tank and K9 self-propelled howitzer, respectively, with the Polish Armed Forces Administration. As a result, the export volume of Korean defense companies is expected to exceed $10 billion for the first time this year, a record high. According to the Defense Acquisition Program Administration, on the 27th, the contract signing ceremony held at the Polish Mechanized Unit was attended by Polish Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister Mariusz Łuskuk, the Director of the Korea Defense Acquisition Program Administration, the head of the Power Resource Management Office of the Korean Ministry of Defense, the President of Hyundai Rotem, and the President of Hanwha Defense. This mechanized unit will be deployed for the first time with the K2 tanks being exported. This contract is the first follow-up contract to actually implement the comprehensive agreement in the nature of a comprehensive agreement signed by domestic defense companies with the Polish Armed Forces on the 27th of last month. In the previous general contract, it was agreed to export 980 K2 tanks from Hyundai Rotem, 648 K9 self-propelled guns from Hanwha Defense, and 48 improved Fa-50s from Kai. The total contract size is estimated to range from 25 trillion won to 40 trillion won, the largest ever. The remaining quantity not included in this first contract will be included in the future contract signing. In addition, Kai's implementation contract for Fa-50 is expected to be signed around next month. The People's Power said that it would file an objection to the court's decision on the provisional disposition after a legal review as soon as possible in relation to the court's suspension of the authority of the Hoyeong-ju Emergency Response Committee. A spokesperson for the floor said, the decision to cite the injunction of the Seoul Southern District Court is an excessive violation of the autonomous decision-making within the political party. On that day, the Seoul Southern District Court cited part of the application of former party leader Lee Jun-sok, saying that the execution of the duties of Ju Ho-young, chairman of the People's Power Emergency Response Committee, should be suspended until the verdict is finalized. The court ruled that the decision of the Emergency Committee chairperson among the resolutions of the National Committee was invalid. He pointed out that there is a risk of irreparable damage as the former party leader will not be able to return as party leader. In addition, he said that some of the requests for injunction filed by former party leader Lee Jun-sok were cited as there was a substantial flaw in the fact that an emergency did not occur enough to have an emergency response committee under the power of the people. Power of the People former party leader Lee Jun-sok said on the 26th that he had no intention of resigning as party leader even if he finally prevailed immediately after the court's decision to cite the injunction. It is the will to continue the all-out war with key officials on the side of President Yoon Suk-yeol and finish his term as party leader until June next year. Former party leader Lee Jun-sok wrote on Facebook that Friday evening is a good time to join the party, and that you can change the power of the people with your participation and make a decision now. Within the passport, evaluations are coming out that it is a move to exert influence in the next party competition. Former party chairman Lee Jun-sok, who has appeared on TV since a press conference that mentioned the real names of Yoon Hak-kwon figures such as National Power Floor leader Kwon Song-dong and Rep. Jang Jae-yong, cancelled all broadcast interviews scheduled immediately after the court's decision. This is because former party leader Lee Jun-sok had an advantageous position as the ruling party's leadership entered into a state of chaos due to the court's decision. A passport official said that in the first legal confrontation, former party leader Lee Jun-sok actually won and the initiative passed to former party leader Lee Jun-sok, and that if former party leader Lee Jun-sok persists without resigning, the idea of the pro-President Yoon camp will be complicated. Although the court accepted the application for injunction and opened the way for Lee Jun-sok, former leader of the People's Strength, to return, there are still many reefs, including suspicion of sexual favors. The police are reviewing the method and timing of investigation into former party leader Lee Jun-sok after completing an investigation into the company's CEO who allegedly offered sexual services, but it is known that they are struggling to find clear evidence to substantiate the charges. Power of the People. The police investigating the allegation of sexual entertainment by former party leader Lee Jun-sok has focused on the investigation of the representative of IKEist, who claims to be a party to the entertainment. He visited the detention center 6 times in the last 2 months to meet Kim, who was imprisoned on other fraud charges. Kim claims that in July and August of 2013, he provided sexual entertainment to former party leader Lee Jun-sok twice, as well as a cosmetic set worth millions of won. However, the police, who have been investigating the case for 7 months, are still struggling with the summons and investigation of former party leader Lee Jun-sok. This is because, in a situation where the arguments of both sides sharply diverge, no clear evidence could be found to prove sexual entertainment to former party leader Lee Jun-sok other than the statement of Chairman Kim. Since the incident itself occurred a long time ago, the statute of limitations for prosecution is also a problem. The time when sexual entertainment was suspected was 9 years ago, in July and August 2013, well beyond the 5-year statute of limitations of the Prostitution Punishment Act, and the 7-year statute of limitations for mediation had already passed. For this reason, the police are paying attention to the fact that CEO Kim claims to have provided gifts several times until Chuseok in September 2015. This is because the statute of limitations of prosecution still remains if the comprehensive crime, which considers a crime with a similar method as a single crime, is applied. However, the recent controversy surrounding the investigation of former party leader Lee Jun-sok is putting a burden on the police as well. Following the suspicion that the head of the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency rebuked the person responsible for the slow speed of the investigation in June, recently, there are also suspicions that a lawmaker, known as a key person in President Yoon's, and a high-ranking police officer met and tried to intervene in the investigation. In order to close the case, the police are carefully reviewing the method and timing as an investigation into former party leader Lee Jun-sok is inevitable. The amendment bill to Article 80 of the Party Constitution of the Democratic Party of Korea, which sparked the controversy over Lee Jae-myung-won's personalization of private members, was voted on at the Central Committee on the 26th. At the Central Committee held 2 days ago, it was rejected due to protests from the Screaming World. This opens the way for Rep. Lee Jae-myung, who is being investigated for the Daejang-dong case and suspicion of paying attorney's fees, as party leader and then indicted by the prosecution, to maintain his position as party leader of the Democratic Party of Korea. Some in the party said that despite the leadership's unprecedented revoting of the Central Committee, the approval rate barely exceeded half, reflecting the opposition within the party to the sacramentalization of Lee Jae-myung. As a result of the vote of the Democratic Party's Central Committee on that day, 311 of 566 members voted in favor of the amendment to the party constitution, the vice chairman of the Central Committee said. It received 43 more votes than when the Central Committee voted on the 24th, exceeding half of the quorum. Unlike the situation in which the Democratic National Convention was held with the overwhelming advantage of Rep. Jae-myung Lee, it was confirmed that there was considerable opposition in the voting of the Central Committee. A Democratic Party official said that the pro-Lee Jae-myung, who was surprised by the denial 2 days ago, systematically encouraged voting, but the approval rate was not very high. The amendment to the constitution of the party will take effect immediately upon the resolution of the Central Committee on the same day. As the Bank of Korea raised the benchmark interest rate 4 times in a row for the first time in history, the Seoul and metropolitan area apartment sales and supply indexes recorded the lowest level in 3 years and 1 month, and buying sentiment is extremely contracted. Apartment sales in Seoul, Jae-yong, and Incheon rose by around 15% as the buying trend began to decline in April, when the base rate hike began. Bundang-gu, Seongnam, is expected to record a record low in transaction volume as the trade cliff in the first new town, where purchases were concentrated in anticipation of reconstruction after the presidential election, has deepened. The Seoul Rehabilitation Court approved Sonjeong Motor's rehabilitation plan on the 26th. As the sale process, which has been ongoing for the past 11 years, has been completed, Sonjeong Motor will be able to pursue a full-fledged business normalization. In order to obtain final approval from the court, the consent of 75% of the rehabilitation-secured creditors, 2/3 of the rehabilitation creditors and more than 1/2 of the shareholders of the rehabilitation plan must be obtained. At the meeting of related parties that day, 100% of rehabilitation-secured creditors, 95.04% of rehabilitation creditors, and 100% of shareholders agreed, greatly exceeding the statutory approval requirements. It is noteworthy whether Sonjeong Motor, which welcomes KG Group as its new owner, can grow into a finished car brand suitable for the era of electric vehicle transition. Sonjeong Motor said, since the rehabilitation procedure began, Sonjeong Motor has faithfully implemented self-rescue plans such as unpaid leave, reduction of salaries and bonuses, and suspension of welfare benefits, and has put all efforts to revive the company by developing new products. We will be reborn as a company with long-term survival capabilities through promotion. It is evaluated that the recent storm of the authentic SUV Taurus will accelerate the graduation from the rehabilitation procedure and become a driving force for the revival. Taurus surpassed the cumulative number of contracts of 60,000 units within 2 months of its release. Sonjeong Motor has set a goal of producing more than 25,000 units by the end of this year. Sonjeong Motor plans to release a midsize SUV electric vehicle in the second half of next year, and the KR10 project, a modern reinterpretation of the Corando, and an electric pickup model in 2024. KG Group expects group affiliates and Sonjeong Motor to create synergy. We believe that KG Group's steel and secondary battery material businesses can be combined with the automobile industry. The Hyundai Motor Group and the Korean government are busy responding to the implementation of the US so-called Electric Vehicle Subsidy Act to reduce inflation. The core of this law is to provide subsidies only for electric vehicles that are finally produced and assembled in North America, such as the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Hyundai and Kia, which mainly import and produce key minerals used in electric vehicle manufacturing in Korea, are excluded from subsidies for electric vehicles exported to the United States, which inevitably impacts the export of electric vehicles to the United States. It is regrettable that the government's response was not swift in the sense that it was predicted to some extent that the related bill could have a significant impact on Korea while it passes through the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives. According to the automobile industry, the number of models eligible for immediate benefits has been reduced to 21 due to the change in the electric vehicle tax credit standard due to the implementation of the IRA in the United States, and all models of Korean manufacturers were excluded from the beneficiary. The key to this law, which will come into effect next year, is to differentiate and deduct the tax amount according to the ratio of battery parts manufactured and assembled in North America among North American electric vehicles and the ratio of core minerals mined in North America or countries that have signed FTAs with the United States. According to this condition, half of the tax credit of about 9.87 million won next year will be differentially supported according to the percentage of origin of core minerals, and the other half according to the percentage of battery parts made in North America. As soon as the IRA goes into effect, Hyundai and Kia are expected to be excluded from subsidies. This is because all electric vehicles of Hyundai Motors and Kia Motors, including the Ioniq, which are currently sold in the US, are all produced in Korea. Lee Jae-yong, vice chairman of Samsung Electronics, who is making a full-fledged business move after the Liberation Day Amnesty Lottery, visited the Suwon plant. Following the groundbreaking ceremony for the semiconductor research complex on the 19th and a visit to the Samsung engineering office building on the 24th, this is the third step for communication with employees. On the 26th, Samsung Electronics announced that Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong had a meeting with Samsung Electronics Video Display Division after receiving a report on the next strategic product from employees of the younger generation. The meeting, which also served as this report, was held in an unconventional format in which the youth employees who participated in the development of next-generation strategic products directly explained to Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong. Employees working in various fields such as product and service planning, platform and software development, and design introduced the various products currently in charge of each and the features and concepts of the next product being developed by Samsung Electronics to Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong. Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong receives reports from vice presidents and presidents, this time from field employees who directly participated in product and service development, and is evaluated as breaking the existing format. The explanation is that it took the radical change of changing the reporter in the form of increasing communication with field staff. At a meeting with the younger generation, some employees asked Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong to send a video letter to the members of the department. Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong readily agreed to this and left a video message on the employee's cell phone. In a meeting with his employees, Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong recently revealed that for the first time in his life, he and his mother, Hong Ra-hee, former director of the Leong Museum of Art, were on vacation alone. The electronic travel permit system will be introduced in Jeju Island from the 1st of next month. The purpose is to prevent foreigners who are denied electronic travel permits from using Jeju Island as a detour for illegal stay. According to the Ministry of Justice on the 26th, the target of the application of the electronic travel permit system to be introduced to Jeju Island is citizens of a total of 112 visa-free entry countries, including 66 visa-exempt countries and 46 general visa-free countries. By accepting suggestions from Jeju Island, which are concerned about a decrease in tourists, citizens of Jeju visa-free countries are excluded from the application. However, if it causes problems with border safety and the order of foreigners' stay, the electronic travel authorization system can be applied through the Council of Related Organizations. Minister of Justice Han Dong-hoon said, the Ministry of Justice will continue to simplify and encourage legal entry as much as possible, but will do its best for safe border management, such as decisively responding to illegal entry attempts. A taxi driver who ran away after hitting a lying passerby on a road in Incheon was found dead one day later. On the 26th, Incheon City's Michihal police station announced that a taxi driver was found dead in a field in Hongcheon, Gangwon Province, around 9 a.m. on the same day. The taxi driver was driving a taxi on the road in Michihal-gu the morning of the previous day and ran away after hitting a woman lying on the road to death. He called the ambulance at the time, but hung up the phone without stating the exact cause of the accident. He was later found to have fled, leaving his car in the parking lot of his house. While tracing the taxi driver, the police received a report about the death from the Hongcheon police station in Gangwon-do and confirmed the identity of the deceased to be a taxi driver who had fled. The police planned to close the case with no right to prosecute as the taxi driver died. The diplomatic authorities of South Korea and Japan held discussions on the issue of compensation for victims of forced mobilization during the Japanese colonial period. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea and the Director of the Asia-Pacific Bureau of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea and the Director of the Asia-Ocean Affairs Bureau of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan held the Korea-Japan director-level consultations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tokyo, Japan, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs said. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that the Director General meeting is part of the communication that the diplomatic authorities of the two countries have continued to seek rational solutions to pending issues, and the Director General of the two countries exchanged views on pending issues and issues of mutual interest. The government announced that while explaining South Korea's efforts on the issue of compensation for forced mobilization, which is the top priority in Korea-Japan relations, it re-emphasized the need for the Japanese side to respond sincerely in order to solve the problem. Japan has demanded that South Korea respond responsibly in line with the Japanese side's consistent position to restore South Korea-Japan relations to a healthy one, the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea said, Korea and Japan agreed that it is important to continue communication between diplomatic authorities for the restoration and improvement of Korea-Japan relations. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan also expressed its position that it would continue the related consultations, saying, "We have decided to continue communication between the diplomatic authorities." Japan, which introduced the F-35 stealth fighter from Lockheed Martin of the United States, has a plan to develop and deploy a sixth-generation fighter by the mid-2030s. The intention is to replace the domestic F-2 fighter with a high-tech model that applies technologies such as stealth, artificial intelligence, and hyperconnected networks. In this regard, the Japanese government said that it is making final adjustments to jointly develop a next-generation fighter in cooperation with the UK. Initially, Japan promoted joint development with Lockheed Martin of the United States, which developed the F-22 and F-35. It was determined that it would be better to work with Lockheed Martin, a supplier of U.S. Air Force fighters, for joint operations with the U.S. military in case of emergency, as they have abundant experience in making stealth aircraft. Japan was planning to invest 1 trillion yen to develop 90 next-generation fighters from around 2035, when the F-2 is retired. Including actual deployment, the total project cost is over 5 trillion yen, a mega-project. Through this, it was a plan to respond to the quantitative superiority of the Chinese Air Force through qualitative improvement. However, as negotiations with Lockheed Martin experienced difficulties, there were concerns about a setback in development. There were not a lot of technical and financial burdens to make independently. This is the reason why Japan paid attention to Britain's move. The UK is also working with Sweden and Italy to develop the sixth-generation fighter Tempest with the goal of deploying it in combat in the 2030s. Japan and the UK are in a similar situation in terms of performance requirements for next-generation fighters and the timing of deployment. Joint development can lower R&D costs and unit cost, and increase production efficiency. The joint development will be handled by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Construction of Japan and B Systems, a British aerospace and defense company. Italian defense company Leonardo is also said to be considering participation. Radar is expected to be developed by Mitsubishi Electric and Leonardo UK. The engine is in charge of Japanese IHI and British Rolls-Royce, and Italian companies are also mentioned. Lockheed Martin is expected to be involved only in securing interoperability with the US military. There are also expectations for the export of sixth-generation fighters in Japan. Britain sold Typhoon fighters jointly developed with Germany and Italy to Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. He also has extensive experience in exporting major weapons, including warships. There is a possibility that Japan will be in charge of production and B Systems will be in charge of marketing. In lieu of finished products, major equipment or parts may be exported. In order to export fighter jets, the operating guidelines of the 3 principles of transfer of defense equipment maintained by the Japanese government must be revised. Operational guidelines permit the transfer of weapons or parts to countries with security cooperation. However, fighters and frigates cannot be exported in the form of finished products, as they are limited to salvage, transport, and surveillance purposes. The Japanese government is considering revising the operating guidelines for the 3 principles of defense equipment transfer within this year so that fighters can also be exported. Meanwhile, China is also developing a sixth-generation fighter with the goal of the mid-2030s. In the 2030s, there is a high possibility that sixth-generation fighters from China and Japan will appear on the Korean peninsula. At the same time, Korea is expected to operate the F-35A, KF-21, and F-15K as its main fighters. If China and Japan deploy sixth-generation fighters, there is a risk that the air power gap will widen further than now. This is the reason why it is pointed out that it is necessary to think about the Air Force operations strategy from a long-term perspective. A Japanese press argued that Japanese people's English skills are far behind the world average and that they should improve their English skills through extensive reading rather than speaking training in line with Japanese tendencies. On the 23rd, Yahoo Japan reported that Japan's TOEFL average score was more than 10 points lower than that of Asian countries such as Korea, China, and Taiwan, citing the Japanese version of Newsweek as to the reason why Japanese people's English level is falling. In the past decade, the number of English speakers worldwide has grown from approximately 1.5 billion to 1.3 billion, representing 17% of the world's population. As the English-speaking population increases, so does the level of English. If you look at the trend of TOEFL IBT scores, the world average score for 2006 years was 79 points, but in 2020, it rose to 87 points. The English proficiency of Asian countries, where English was poor, is also improving year by year. In the 2020 TOEFL IBT average score by country, Korea scored 86 points, China 87 points, and Taiwan 85 points, showing scores similar to the global average. However, Japan has an average score of 73, not keeping up with the rate of increase in other countries. Currently, Japan's Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology is aiming for English proficiency to achieve CEFR European Common Language Standard Level A2 before high school graduation. In a grade divided into 6 levels, A2 is the second grade from the bottom. Newsweek pointed out that the CEFR A2 rating that Japan is targeting is too low a target. He also compared that Korea, which was said to be poor at English like Japan 20 years ago, has now been reborn as a country that can speak English as well as Hong Kong. In addition, China and Taiwan also improved their English proficiency quickly by raising the difficulty of the English curriculum to the level of CEFR B2. Newsweek argued that English education in Japan should not place too much weight on conversation about how to improve English skills. Conversation skills are important, but the Japanese are more cautious than Koreans and Chinese, so the way of speaking, which is not afraid of making mistakes, is not suitable for Japanese people. Instead, they insisted that they should improve their English skills through extensive reading by introducing an application for a favorite author, a website in an area of interest, or an English blog reading training. Thank you for watching today. Please like and subscribe.